So bearing in mind what we've seen so far, let's take a look at still another situation.
Simon, please call
Elizabeth, give me a couple minutes, would you?
Sure, Larry, what's up?
Let's go inside my office, where it's cramped but messy.
But it's you, Larry. It's definitely you.
Sit down. Look, I got a call from Arnie in Creative.
Oh, yeah, I turned my big project in last week. How does he like it?
He hates it.
What?
Of course, I may be severely understating the case here.
I don't understand. Arnie told me everything was fine.
Well, then we have different stories. Arnie told me the material was late and incomplete. He thinks you dogged it and then waited till the last minute to turn it in. That makes Creative miss their deadlines and look bad.
Now turn to page 5 in your workbook and again, go through the responses that are printed there. Using the B for behavior and the G for goal, indicate the response that you would most likely give in this situation along with that response that is the goal. In other words, the way you would like to learn how to respond. So pause the tape, and when you're done, please start the tape again, and we'll discuss your responses. Let's take a look at the responses and note not only what your response is, but who you are responding to.
That makes Creative miss their deadlines and look bad.
I'm sorry. I tried to give them what they wanted. I guess I just didn't work it through well enough.
If this is the response that you chose, let's take a closer look. Number 1, did you respond to the appropriate person? No, of course not. The truth is the boss was the immediate issue because he's right there in your face. But is he the source of the problem? No. Because you chose not to go directly to the source, this is the passive response. With this response, what will the boss assume about your work? Incompetent, that it wasn't okay, and that you've been caught. Is the assumption accurate? No. Isn't this Elizabeth's fault? Now think about this. In her response, didn't she set herself up to have it be her fault? After all this, do you think that the boss is going to see you as someone who will stand up for yourself? No, and finally, how are you going to feel about yourself if you were Elizabeth and about Arnie? How would you feel? You're going to like yourself rolling over again and dying? Are you going to be comfortable that you can handle whatever else comes your way if attacked? Probably not. You should go directly to the source, who is, in this case, Arnie in Creative, but still, this may not turn out exactly as you had hoped.
Oh, Elizabeth, I was just going over your project. I talked to Larry about it.
I don't even know where to start with you, Arnie. Next time you have a problem with me, you come talk to me directly and don't sneak around to Larry trying to undercut me. And anyway, I wasn't late, and I gave you everything you needed. And as for the quality of the work, if you or your staff were any kind of artists at all, you could do a great job with exactly what I gave you.
Okay, now this choice may appear to be the logical response based on the anger that you felt at being blasted unfairly. However, in truth, this is an aggressive response with no basis in fact. Did Elizabeth ask Arnie directly for specifics before just launching into him? Or did she even give him a chance to respond? No. Right. She didn't ask, and in fact, she cut him off when he even tried to respond. One of the other choices you could have picked also allows you to release your anger, but to your boss instead of to Arnie. Let's look at that response.
Well, then we have different stories. Arnie told me the material was late and incomplete. He thinks you dogged it and then waited to the last minute to turn it in. That makes Creative miss their deadlines and look bad.
Well, you know the quality of people we have in Creative. Business people, executives. I don't think so. I doubt any of them are worth their salt.
Some of the key questions in this response are, 1, have I gone to the source of the problem? No. Question 2, is making nasty remarks about the creative staff really addressing the issue? No. And question 3, how does Elizabeth now look to her boss? Negative. Maybe even like a jerk covering up, perhaps. And the 4th question, given some time, 2 minutes, 2 hours, or 2 days, will Elizabeth still be comfortable with the words she chose and with their consequences? No. How often have we said something in the heat of emotion and we're very sorry about it, either right away or relatively soon? What might the consequences in this situation actually be? What could they be?
Creating a problem.
Good. Creating a problem exactly as you said it was going to be. Excellent. Any other?
Credibility.
Credibility is truly questioned. If you picked the 4th response, you actually have the best chance of succeeding. Let's see how that one might look.
Oh, Elizabeth, I was just going over your project. I talked to Larry about it.
So I've heard, and I have to admit, I was somewhat surprised when Larry told me you were less than happy with the content and thought I missed the deadline. Actually, dogging it was the phrase I think you used.
Well, I think that may have been overstated.
Well, I thought we could talk about this so that next time I can be sure to give you everything your department needs.
Sure. That would be fine, I guess.
That's cleared up a lot.
Yeah, for both of us.
Now, Arnie, please, next time, if you have a problem with something I've done, could you please just call me directly? I'd really appreciate it.
We need to ask some of the same questions that we ask about the other responses. 1, how did Elizabeth feel this time after dealing with Arnie?
Confident.
Confident? Sure. And number 2, did she address the facts this time?
Yes.
Number 3, when she solves this problem at the source, how will her boss view her performance? Positively. As if she can handle things again if given that situation. And number 4, by dealing with the problem in this way, has she set herself up for success in the future? Yes. With her boss? Yes. With Arnie? And how about with any other departments that she might have to work with in the future? The assertive techniques, and again, I'd like you to write them in your workbook, are, number 1, speaking to the facts, allowing for corrections, and accepting accountability by going to the source of the situation.
And so, by going through these situations and completing your assessment, you were not only able to see your own strengths and areas for improvement, but at the same time discover the 4 most common communication styles: passive, aggressive, passive-aggressive, and the style that is your goal, assertive. Now, let's join Carol as she develops an overall definition of assertiveness.
Dr. Andrew Salter defined assertiveness in the following way, and I quote, "The excitatory person," this is his term for assertiveness, "is direct, responding outwardly to his environment. When confronted with a problem, he takes immediate constructive action. He sincerely likes people, but he does not care what they may think. He makes rapid decisions, and he likes responsibility. Above all, the excitatory person is free of anxiety." And it's important to note here that Salter is recognized as the father of modern behavior therapy. The second definition is our dictionary definition, which is to state positively, to declare, to affirm, to maintain or defend rights or claims. The third definition is from our Declaration of Independence, and it states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." From these bold words, combined with the strong threads you discovered in the situations we just looked at, we can develop our own working definition of assertiveness for this program. And that is that assertiveness means standing up for one's rights without violating the rights of any other person. Key phrase here is the rights of any other person, which means that your rights are equal to, not less than or more than, the rights of any other person. Those in your family, those that you work with, or strangers on the street. To be able to stand up for your rights, you must first be aware of each of them. Right number 1, I am entitled to try anything, anytime, if I am willing to accept the consequences. Right number 2, I am entitled to succeed and I am entitled to fail. Right number 3, I am entitled to design my life and my lifestyle. Right number 4, I'm entitled to meet my needs and or to ask to have them met. And right number 5, I am entitled to celebrate my worth based on my own standards. Here is a key point to remember. Assertiveness means acting in your own interest, to maintain your own rights, but without violating those rights of any other person. Passive people violate their own rights, meaning they don't stand up for what they want or ask for what they deserve. Aggressive people violate other people's rights. And assertive people take care of their own rights without violating the rights of others. Assertive behavior is a choice that allows you comfort, that allows you pride, and allows you success. But first and foremost, it is a choice that only you can make. So let's begin by setting up the 4 communication models. Passive, which is the first, is hoping or hinting that others will act on our needs. Passive people communicate indirectly. They do not say what they want. Rather, they expect others to figure it out and give them what they need. When they don't get what they want, they pout. Or they can move into being passive-aggressive. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is that passive behavior is a game. Passive people are very concerned about how others see them. It's very important to them that they are liked by everybody, and this causes them to, on occasion, behave in self-sacrificing ways. But later, they can resent the person they made that sacrifice for. This behavior perpetuates a negative cycle. Let's review some of the examples of passive behavior, and I want you to pay special attention to the language and the tone of voice that they use.
Why bother? They're so busy talking, they probably wouldn't hear me either.
New thought. What were you thinking anyway?
I'm sorry. I guess I just didn't make it clear enough. I'll be glad to go back and rework the numbers.
That makes creative miss their deadlines and look bad.
I'm sorry. I tried to give them what they wanted. I guess I just didn't work it through well enough.
Please stop the tape and complete the exercise on page 7 of your workbook. Pick out the passive words, phrases, and passive tone you heard and write them down in the space provided.
Again, in looking at those responses, what are the common phrases that you heard? And that's the most blatant one, absolutely. I'm sorry. You heard why bother? Some of you heard, I guess I just didn't. What words specifically were used that diminished and demeaned the people using them? The I, and again the I'm sorry, those specific, although phrases, also words, puts us in a position of being nailed again. What was the tone of voice you heard in all three responses?
Whiny.
Whiny, good. What else?
Apologetic.
Apologetic, excellent. Vocal behaviors that we heard where they spoke softly or tentatively. They were ready to be yelled at. And probably the most telling characteristic in all three situations was when each chose the language of the defeated. So what about aggressive people? What sets them apart? Let's take a look at the language and the tone of voice they use.
Somebody answer the phone. Now!
That you gave it one iota of new thought. What were you thinking anyway?
Hey, you can't talk to me like that. If you don't like the way I do these reports, you can just go do them yourself.
Oh, Elizabeth, I was just going over your project. I talked to Larry about it.
I don't even know where to start with you, Arnie. Next time you have a problem with me, you come talk to me directly and don't sneak around to Larry trying to undercut me. And anyway, I wasn't late, and I gave you everything you needed. And as for the quality of the work, if you or your staff were any kind of artist at all, you could do a great job with exactly what I gave you.
Please stop the tape and complete the exercise on page 8 of your workbook. Pick out the aggressive words, phrases, and aggressive tones you heard and write them down in the space provided.
We heard loud words. We heard inflammatory words. We heard threatening words. If you ever do that again, I will. We heard short, choppy sentences. For example, well, oh, if I'm aggressive, I require my needs to be met at any expense. The aggressive person doesn't care about the needs of others or about how he or she is perceived. He or she certainly doesn't care about other people's feelings. This type of behavior is perpetuated because, for the most part, it works, at least in the short run. Other people are hesitant to take on that aggressive person because it's so unpleasant. They choose their words not to be demeaned, as we saw in the passive, but to do the demeaning. And quite often, they will attack the person rather than staying focused on the issue. And they are expecting fear to be the base for not being questioned back. So we've seen passive and aggressive vocal cues. Let's now take a look at the style that combines both. And this time, I want you to pay attention to the language and the tone of voice that they are giving.
How come nobody but me ever bothers to answer the phone around here? Why do I have to do it all?
New thought? What were you thinking anyway? Well? Oh, what's the use? Let's go, all of you, except for Tom.
Just one little alteration here on this chart, and the up arrow is now the down arrow. Now just wait until the boss goes through the stockholders.
Waited to the last minute to turn it in. That makes creative miss their deadlines and look bad.
Well, you know the quality of people we have in creative. Business people, executives? I don't think so. I doubt any of them are worth their salt.
Please stop the tape and complete the exercise on page 9 of your workbook. Pick out the passive-aggressive words, phrases, and passive-aggressive tones you heard and write them down in the space provided.
Passive-aggressive people avoid direct responses. Instead, they get even with other people later for real or imagined slights. Passive-aggressive behavior is interesting because it's a hybrid of the other two. Passive people become passive-aggressive when they're fed up. Aggressive people behave passive-aggressively when they perceive that they cannot act in their normal aggressive fashion, and that's usually when the other person has authority. For instance, an aggressive person who works for an aggressive boss may not tackle that boss directly, but might get even later, as we saw in the sabotage example a few minutes ago. Passive behavior cues tend to be sarcasm, sniping, and indirect criticism, and lack of eye contact. It's often hard to tell when a person will behave passive-aggressively because passive-aggressive people collect what we call green stamps. In other words, they may respond passively to a person attacking, but they will put one little bitty stamp in a book just to remind themselves they were attacked. As the passive continues to be attacked and continues to put that one little bitty stamp in the book for each and every attack, before long, their book is full. When they're attacked again, which is now common behavior, without anyone knowing the book is full, it's time for the passive to redeem that full book. And that redemption of the book is an unexpected, aggressive response. They may blow up, or they may get even in a covert way. Because they don't tell others something is bothering them, they give permission to continue behavior that offends them. Now, we've looked at 3 communication styles that don't work very well. Let's look at the 4th, which is the assertive response. And this time, I want you to pay attention to the language and the tone of voice that they are giving.
Tom, I want you to answer that call right now.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, fine, yes.
And since the receptionist is out today, I want you to answer and log all calls the rest of this morning.
Fine.
And Mary, I'd like you to take over after lunch.
Sure, no problem.
You gave it one iota of new thought? What were you thinking anyway?
Actually, Mr. Ratner, I did spend 3 weeks preparing this report, and I've checked the figures 4 times. I'd appreciate it if you'd tell me specifically where we differ.
Oh, Elizabeth, I was just going over your project. I talked to Larry about it.
So I've heard, and I have to admit, I was somewhat surprised when Larry told me you were less than happy with the content and thought I missed the deadline. Actually, dogging it was the phrase I think you used.
Well, I think that may have been overstated.
Well, I thought we could talk about this so that next time I can be sure to give you everything your department needs.
Sure. That would be fine, I guess.
That's cleared up a lot.
Yeah, for both of us.
Now, Arnie, please, next time, if you have a problem with something I've done, could you please just call me directly? I'd really appreciate it.
Please stop the tape and complete the exercise on page 10 of your workbook. Pick out the assertive words, phrases, and assertive tone you heard and write them down in the space provided.
The assertive person values the needs of all people. Assertive people state what they want, but they do it in a way that takes into account what others need. Assertive people hold themselves and others accountable, especially to speak up. In other words, assertive people believe they and others have the responsibility to ask for what they need. When assertive people deal with passive people, they may become annoyed that the other person doesn't just say what he wants, rather than bringing it up later when nothing can be done about it. Physical cues to assertiveness are: space is respected, heads are held straight, not bowed. This posture demonstrates equality and self-confidence. Shoulders are held back, projecting a straightforward approach. The assertive person uses direct eye contact, again to demonstrate comfort with that situation. A confident stance also demonstrates comfort. Some of those vocal behaviors we heard include a reasonable, confident tone of voice, a delivery that was even, that was firm, direct, and most importantly, had no indication whatsoever of fear or anger. What words showed the speaker had confidence in what he said? What words did you hear? right now, so they're going to deal with it as it happens. What else?
Responsibility.
Responsibility, good, and that's one of the key words. How about, again, the word differ, rather than where did I mess up? And we often hear that as we're speaking and uncomfortable with what we've given. The word actually, which stated that he would not accept the notion that he hadn't worked hard. And the next time, as you mentioned, rather than, oh no, what am I going to do now? In conclusion, assertive vocal cues, when backed up by body cues, demonstrate to the other person that they will be dealt with fairly and with respect. You can see that the assertive choice is the most beneficial and effective option for everyone. Assertiveness is your choice, a choice that gives you power, pride, and the confidence to handle any situation.
This is the end of Side 2. Please replace this with Side 3 to continue with assertive communication skills with Carol Price.